Hello wonderful people, and welcome back to the underrated build series, where we create some odd builds and proceed with kicking some ass with them. Let's begin, fellow Ashen ones. Build number 1, the Tanky Warrior. There are two very different variations of this build. One concentrates on very high level of flat defense, and the other concentrates on very high HP. Let's start with the first variation. In the latest patches, heavy armor got buffed in general, so we are going to equip some of the best defense armor pieces in the game. The small headpiece, Herald Legion chest piece, Winged Knight gauntlet, and the Herald Legion leggings. Most of the stats increase your flat defenses, but the two stats that gives you the most flat defenses are Vitality and Strength. With 44 Vitality and 66 Strength, your flat defense is insane. You'll have almost 190 flat defense. That alone will show big improvements in defense, but when stacked with the armor pieces and the Ring of Steel Protection plus 3, you become a walking tank. We will also use the Ring of Favor plus 3 and the Life Ring plus 3. This way we will have way more HP, so we become more difficult to kill. The fourth ring slot is up to you. Guys, the change in gameplay that you will see is massive. I mean, any other build that you will use will feel very squishy after trying out this build. Beware though, great hammers and massive weapons can still deal a ton of damage, but smaller and faster weapons become way weaker. This is mainly in PvP. However, in PvE, your defenses are top notch, and you will be able to resist most physical attacks with ease. With 66 strength, you have a ton of weapons to use that deal massive amounts of damage. So you're not just resistant to most physical attacks, but you also deal a ton of damage yourself. I had 9 dexterity on this build, which was a mistake. I would go 10 dexterity to open up most of the straight swords, so make sure to do that if you want to use any of them. Now let's look at variation number 2 of this build. Here we sacrifice a bit of damage and flat defenses in order to have a ton of HP. 80 vigor to be exact. Stacked with a Ring of Favor plus 3 and Life Ring plus 3, you'll have about more than 2000 HP as a host. This is also stacked with a full Havel set, so our defenses are really high too. Our flat defenses suffer though, it becomes around the 160s, but the defenses in general are still much higher than average. I really wanted to use raw or good weapons with little stat investments, but ignoring the strength stat completely will really hurt your flat defenses, which is the most important defense stat. You still have a lot of options for weapons too. The Erythal Sword, Ring Knight Sword, the Moroyan Blade, Raw Broadsword, and the Heavy Mace can work really well with this build. In PvP, you will notice that you have much more HP to survive prolonged fights, but the effect is much bigger in PvE, especially that the Ring of Steel Protection plus 3 works better in PvE. I mean, take a look yourself. So which variation do I think is better? Well, both fill slightly different roles, but from my experience using them, I would say that the first variation is for a PvP centric build, and the second one is more of a PvE centric build. But regardless of which one you roll with, the Tanky Warrior will walk tall and proud. Second build, the Sacred Dragon. Remember when I told you in the last episode that I will further experiment with a Dragon Head Great Shield? Well, I did, and the results were magnificent. This build is a combination of a pyro build and a strength build. The strength part of this build is so we can use the Dragon Great Shield, which requires 35 strength and 15 faith, and it also weighs 18 units, which is way too high. The weight on this thing is so high that it's actually our biggest weakness on this build, as it restricts our armor and weapon choices big time due to how limited our stat distribution is. However, the gains you get from this shield is so worth it, and I can understand why they restrict access to this shield, as its weapon art is super useful, as it gives you immense amount of poise, meaning that we won't get interrupted during our casting animations. The pyro part of this build relies on a couple of things. First, the Pyromancer's Parting Flame. This Pyro Flame specializes in close range spells and combat. It emits a small fire combustion with each spell you cast, which means you can hit both the spell and the fire combustion at the same time, dealing massive damage that opens up cool combos and capabilities. Two spells that benefit a lot from this is the Black Flame and the Sacred Flame. If we ignore everything on this build and have just 40 in Faith and Intelligence with Parting Pyro Flame and the Black Flame only, we will still have a top-notch build. But here, we want to go further. Our plan is as follows. Use the weapon art of the Dragon Head Great Shield, then force your Black Flame or Sacred Flame on your enemies. Since we can trade with spells, which is not possible without this shield or poise from talismans, you will guarantee your spell damage as long as you time your castings. This is so awesome. When you get the 4th Sacred Flame that gives you the win, you will feel like a total badass. But there are things to look for. First, this shield shouldn't be used like Perseverance weapons, like the Black Knight Greatsword or the Castus Fist weapons or the Mace, which usually are used right in front of your opponents since they are very fast. But since this is a shield and it blocks during the weapon art, it's possible to get guard broken and killed. Also, it's kinda slow, so you must time the weapon art precisely, usually before the enemy engages from mid-range. Also, my armor pick here doesn't have enough poise to withstand great hammers and ultra great swords. You can redeem it by having a better armor, but I didn't have the time to dabble with that enough. Regardless of choice, here is what I know. The Sacred Dragon will strike fear in the hearts of men and burn them back to ashes. Build number 3. The Healington. You know, we give invaders too much love here on this channel, so I think it's time to give some cooperators some love too. They are, after all, the force of good in the world. Excluding gankers, of course, but they deserve much love, that's why we have this unique build. The Healington focuses on healing and buffing everybody in battle, making sure to keep the odds in your favor. There are many variations of this build I did. It's mostly a balance between attunements and faith, and since we won't be using any offensive miracles, we won't be using the 2 miracle rings, which means we have 2 open slots to put other rings that benefit us. This build works best in 2 scenarios: arena battles that consist of 2 versus 2 or 3 versus 3, and of course, jolly cooperation. In the arena, you get only 1 Ashen Estus Flask in group fights, so having a ton of attunements can really help. In normal co-op, I'm proud to say that this build doesn't even require Estus Flasks, since you have so many healing spells, so just switch all your normal flasks to Ashen Estus Flasks. Now the reason for the different variations is because of the healing spells. Regen HP spells and buffs don't scale with your faith stat, like Bountiful Sunlight, Sacred Oath, and Deep Protection. That's why on some builds we don't even need that much faith. But there are major spells that do scale with faith, such as Projected Heal, Mid Heal, and Soothing Sunlight, and that's why I equipped 2 casting tools. The first one is the Chime of Filianor, which has a weapon art that regenerates HP for you and everybody around you, even after you switch it for another weapon, making it unique compared to other chimes. It also has an extended range for heals and buffs, making it a better option for non-scaling spells, since it's kinda difficult to anticipate your teammates' movements, and this will redeem that. The only problem with this chime is that its spell buff is kinda low at high levels of faith, so using spells that scale with faith is not a good idea with this chime. And that's why we use talismans for the scaling spells. And there is no better feeling than using the Soothing Sunlight or Great Heal spells with the poise weapon art from the talisman right in the middle of battle. That's why you also need a lot of HP yourself and a lot of defenses too, since you will be attacked while healing, but after you heal, it won't really matter. Projected Heal is your ultimate spell. You can continuously heal everybody, which makes you a very valuable ally in the battlefield. And I have to say, it's much more difficult to succeed in the arena with this build, but with some practice, you will become the ultimate healer and cooperator in no time. So that's why we also have the Sunlight Sword and the Dark Moon Blade, so we can also be offensive when we need to be. But also with the amount of attunements we have, it's cool to use weapons that have cool weapon arts, since you can spam it to no end. So these are all the builds for this video. I will sure have more builds for you very soon. In the meantime, if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will leave you with some extra footage. See you in my next video, my friends. Farewell.